Let's start. Before we start, have you watched the video on YouTube? Why do I only have 11 likes then? If Sarah is shaking her head. Did you like the video, Sarah? No. Okay. Open the video, like it. Yeah? Yeah? Train yourself to be a little bit generous, yeah? Just a click. It's not 1 dinar. It's a click, free. Yeah? I'm not asking you to pay me money. At least a like, Sarah. No, Ibrahim. Please open the video and like it. Toqa, Dalal, Isa, I uploaded the video. That's good. All right, thank you. I believe you, Sarah. That's good. Who else? Yeah, please, Ghufran. Ghufran, you should tell them. No, I shouldn't be telling you. You should tell them. Yeah. Yeah. Go like the video. Asma. Yeah, I'm not gonna start the list. All right. How many subscribers do we have today? 141. It's good. Yeah. But go like the video. Look, how many likes do we have? How many likes? 11 likes. I feel bad. Like the video. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your everyone to like the video. Before we start, like the video. You can comment if you want, but I do not want to ask for too much. Because you're going to think that I'm greedy. Asking for a comment. I still have 11 likes. Let me refresh. 17 likes. Okay, that's good. Let's reach 20. That would be good. It's a nice rounded number. Isa, we're not going to reach 20. Can you start the lesson, please? Yeah, 20, 17, 18. Two more. For fun. How many like? 18 still. Allah, you stingy students. I'm not gonna ask you for anything anymore. It's my bad. I shouldn't be teaching. All right. Yalla, 18 better than nothing. It's good. 19. Man, no, let's make him 20. Let's make him 20. I'll feel good about myself. Still 19. So you're wasting your time. Oh, 20. Okay, let's start. In this video, probably I know that you didn't really watch the video, but let me show you something in the video because I know that you didn't watch it. Let me share the screen. 1 second. Please pay attention. Getting serious now. Look, this is the video, yeah? I created this table for you. When I was doing the editing, I created this table. Because it looks better than the ugly one that I showed you. Look. Right. See this one? Who saw this table? The cheat sheet? Yeah, because you don't care. You're only having Mahmoud. Take a screenshot of this video because of this table because we're gonna use it. This is better than the ugly one that you took a screenshot of. Take another screenshot of this one. Because we're gonna use it today. Yeah. Yeah, you don't care. You don't care about your future. I care about your future more than you do. But it's okay, no problem. Take a screenshot or a photo. Take a photo, yeah? You keep messaging me on Instagram and annoying me all the time. Okay, I'll take a photo. All right. Good. I'm gonna use this table in today's class. All right. So, in the last lecture, we spoke about the marking criteria for the writing. And I told you that we have 4 different marking criteria. We have task achievement, we have coherence and cohesion, we have lexical resource, and we have grammatical range and accuracy. And I told you under task achievement, you should hit the minimum word count, answer the question, have developed ideas, avoid overgeneralization, avoid inaccuracy, avoid inappropriacy. Under cohesion and coherence, I told you to write using paragraphs, have central topics or central themes, have a logical overall, have a logical progression and flow of ideas, use cohesive devices appropriately. Under lexical resource, I told you to use topic-related vocabulary. I told you to avoid repeating the same words. I told you to use uncommon words. I told you to pay attention to word choice and formality. I told you to use collocations properly. I told you to not make spelling mistakes and to stick to one spelling style. I told you to avoid making word formation mistakes. Under grammatical range and accuracy, I told you to use complex sentences and structures. I told you to use a wide range of structures. I told you to avoid making punctuation mistakes. And I told you to make most of your sentences mistake-free. Correct? Yes, I don't know, but it looks like it's correct. So, okay, correct. Yeah, it's correct. You look at the table. In the last lecture, I showed you how to write a proper task 2 essay. Today, I'm going to show you how to write a proper task 1 report. The academic version of the IELTS exam. But let me tell you something. Today, you're not going to only have one ESA. You say, what do you mean? Today, you're going to have 2 ESAs. Me and another me. But the other me is probably 3 years younger than my current me. So we have me and the younger me. You say, what do you mean? I'm going to show you a video of myself writing a task 1 essay, not essay, a task 1 report, word by word, and my older me is going to comment on my younger me. So you're going to be having 2 ESAs. You said, we only need 1. 2 is too much for us. We cannot handle 2. It's okay, don't worry. Yeah? I'm going to show you a report of my younger self writing this report and writing a band 9 or a band 8.5 report. And this video that I'm going to show you is a video of one of the videos inside our comprehensive course on the website. Yeah. So I want to show you how I teach my students who are enrolled in the course. Okay. So pay attention. I'm going to comment on myself. So pay attention, please. Yeah. Yeah. You good? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 2.5, 2.75, 3.
It's about time we put everything we learned into practice.
Same voice? Same voice? Okay.
Because with that practicing, all what you've watched means nothing. Okay? Let's start with this exercise. Let's read it. The chart below shows the total number of minutes in billions of telephone calls in the UK, divided into 3 categories from 1994 to 2001. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Lovely. And here's the chart that we have. Apparently, it's a bar chart or a bar graph, and we have a timeline on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, we have the number of minutes in billions. Okay? We have local fixed line, national and international fixed line, and we have mobiles, between parentheses, all calls.
Let me comment here. As I told you previously, that task 1 academic, you can have a lot of different charts or graphs or diagrams. You can have a chart with a timeline. You can have a chart without a timeline. You can have a pie chart. You can have a table. You can have multiple charts. You can have a process diagram, and you can have maps. So this is one of the options that you might get in the exam, and this is one of the most popular question types that you might face in the exam. Okay? This doesn't mean that you're going to face the exact same thing in the exam. This is an example of one of the topics that I explain in my course. Okay? So pay attention. And obviously in the exam, they're not going to give you the drawing with colors. No colors in the exam. Why? They do not really care about you. Who cares about you? Isa cares about you. Not just me. The younger Isa also cares about you. Okay? So 2 Isas care about you. Okay? Can you believe this? 2 Isas? Isa, we only want 1 Isa to care about us. Imagine having 2. Okay.
So the first part, or the first step that you gotta do in the exam is to read the question. We read the question. Now we have to classify the question. Which type is the question? Well, the question is a chart with a timeline because we have deity, a timeline starting from 1994 to 2001. So we've done the first 2 parts. We read the question, we classified the question. Now, the third thing is to notice the main trends, differences, or stages.
Let me tell you something. You know when you have a graph with a timeline, sometimes the timeline might be even in the future. So this timeline is in the past. Sometimes the timeline might be divided in 2. One of the parts is in the past and the other one is in the future. So obviously the tenses that you're going to be using are going to be different. You have to pay attention to the dates or the years that are used. Okay? So obviously when you have this question, you have to, first of all, look at the graph. Is it a graph with a timeline or without a timeline? Why is it important? Because the language that you're going to use and the words that you're going to use and the verbs that you're going to use and the tenses that you're going to use are going to be different. Okay? So you have to know what sort of graph you're getting.
In other words, to think what we're going to be writing in our overview. Because as I've already told you before, regarding the introduction, you don't have to plan the introduction. You plan your overview. All right, let's have a look.
Okay, this might not sound familiar to you. Let me tell you something. You know when we wrote an essay, how many paragraphs did we write? 4. An introduction, body paragraph number 1, body paragraph number 2, and a conclusion. When you write a task 1 report, you also write 4 paragraphs, but you have to pay attention. Paragraph number 1 is an introduction. Paragraph number 2 is what we call an overview. An overview is also known as a summary. It's a paragraph that summarizes the main trends, differences, or features in the graph. And then after the introduction and after the overview, you're going to have a paragraph number 1 and a paragraph number 2. In the introduction, you normally paraphrase the question. So whatever you see here, you just paraphrase it using your own words. And now you're going to see how it's done. In the overview, you write the first thing that you notice when you look at the graph. And now you're going to see. In the body paragraphs, you have to combine, categorize, or classify the information into 2 categories or 2 groups of data. In each body paragraph, you talk about 1 group of data. When you see, you're going to understand. Okay? So it's fine if you cannot understand everything now. While I'm doing it, I'm going to be explaining it. Okay?
What is the first thing that we can notice? Well, I can notice a few things actually. I can notice that the green columns are increasing. They're getting bigger, obviously, the mobiles. And I can notice the blue columns are also increasing, like they're getting bigger. And I notice that the local fixed lines, the yellow columns, are increasing and then decreasing.
Why am I talking about this? Because now I want to write, or not write, I want to have in mind what I'm going to be writing in the overview, in the summary. The summary or the overview is the second body paragraph where you write the thing that you can notice when you first look at the graph or graphs. So I'm telling you, what is the first thing that you can notice when you look at this graph? What is the most obvious thing that you can notice when you look at the graph? So we can write it in our overview.
Okay, so this is my first observation. Another observation could be that the yellow column remained the highest throughout the period, and the green columns remained the lowest throughout the period. And also the blue column remained in the middle throughout the period. Yeah, but we don't really care about the blue one. We only care about the maximum and the minimum, or the highest and the lowest in most of the cases. Yeah, so obviously you can write your overview in many different ways. Okay, you can say, for example, that throughout the period, whereas local fixed lines remained on top, the mobile calls remained at the bottom. Yeah, don't worry about the language that I'm using now. I'm just telling you the content. Okay, obviously we're gonna write it properly. Or we can write another overview. We can say, throughout the period, mobiles experienced an increase, and also the national international fixed lines, whereas the local fixed lines experienced an increase and then a decrease.
In the overview, which is the second body paragraph, you normally write what you can observe first. Or what is the thing that's most obvious? There's no right or wrong answers. You can write anything as long as it makes sense. Yeah? Like Sarah can write something and it could be correct, and Mena could write another thing and it could also be correct. Dalal could write another thing and it could also be correct. Okay? As long as it's something that you can notice when you look at the graphs or the graph.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the first option because it's simpler. All what I'm gonna be saying is that the local fixed lines remained on top, whereas mobiles remained at the bottom. Okay, so now we planned our overview. The following step is to classify your data into 2 groups.
Now, let me tell you something. I'm talking about the overview now. Even though the first body paragraph is not the overview, the first body paragraph is the introduction. But I'm not planning it. Why? You will know why now when I write it. Because when you write the introduction, your brain, you switch it off. You don't even have to use your brain. Why? Because you only paraphrase the question. You only rewrite the question using your own words. That's why I'm not using any brain capacity now for the introduction. In the introduction, you switch your brain off. I'm thinking about the second body paragraph. So I decided what I want to do regarding the overview. Now I'm thinking how I'm going to be dividing the information into two groups. Why two groups, Isa? Because I want to write two body paragraphs. It's always two body paragraphs. Isa, can I write three? Yes, you can. But do you have time? No, you don't. Can you write 4 paragraphs or 4 body paragraphs? You can. Do you have time? You don't. So the best way is to write one introduction, an overview, and 2 body paragraphs. So 4 paragraphs in total, because you do not really have time. You only have 20 minutes to do everything. Isa, does this apply to all the reports? Yes. All the reports in the academic task 1 writing, you should be writing 4 paragraphs. One introduction all the time, one overview all the time, 2 body paragraphs all the time. Isa, all the time? 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 Come on. All the time. Okay? So now I'm thinking about a way to classify the information into 2 groups. Why 2 groups? Because we have 2 body paragraphs. Let's see how I am going to divide the information that I have into 2 paragraphs. Sarah is saying here, no number for word. It's 250. It's 150 words in task 1. Sarah, wake up. Yeah. Yeah, Isa, don't make me look bad. I'm not gonna ask any more questions in the chat. You always embarrass me. 150 words.
So you know what to include in each one of your body paragraphs. How can we classify them into 2 groups? Well, you might be telling yourself that, all right, these 2 are increasing, the blue columns and the green columns. We can have them in one group, in other words, in one body paragraph, whereas the yellow or the orange columns, we can have them in another body paragraph. This is correct. You can do it that way. Another way, if you just focus a little bit more, which is in fact easier than the first way, is to classify the yellow ones with the blue ones. Why? Because they fall under the same type. Here we have fixed lines, and here we have fixed lines as well. So both of these two are technically one type, which is fixed lines. Whereas the mobiles can be talked about in a separate body paragraph. I'm going to follow this strategy, okay? So I planned. Now I planned. I've read the question, classified the question, planned my overview, classified the information into 2 groups. Lovely, beautiful, okay? The next step is going to be writing the introduction.
Have you noticed that I spent 5 minutes? You remember when I told you that you have to divide your time properly when you write task 1? I told you to spend around 3 minutes to plan. Obviously, it's 3 minutes, but because I'm explaining, that's why it's a little bit longer. This is me planning before I start writing. So in the actual exam, I'm not going to start writing directly. I have to plan. I have to analyze the question. I have to structure my report. So this is me planning, structuring my report. Do not start writing directly. Okay? And the way you divide the body paragraphs, it's up to you. There is no right or wrong answers. And the way you write the overview is also up to you. The information that you choose in the overview is up to you. The way you divide the information in the body paragraphs is up to you. There's no right or wrong answers. As long as the classification that you make makes sense. All right? So this is the first video, because this is how I have it on the website. On the website, Each part has its own video. Now let me play the second video, which is writing the introduction.
As I've already told you before, when you write your introduction, you don't even have to think about anything. All what you have to do is to paraphrase the question and write it in your own words.
Oh, Isa, I like this part. This is my favorite part. I do not like to think in this life. Yeah, good. So in the introduction, don't think. Okay? Isa, can we write 4 introductions in the report? No. Unfortunately, you can only write 1 introduction. Okay? So you have to use your brain.
So we're going to write this question in our own words. Lovely. Let's start. So the chart, I'm not going to write the chart. Normally, when we start our introduction, we do this. The supplied, the given, the provided.
Supplied, given, provided. You choose whatever you want to choose. Supplied, given, provided.
All right, the supplied. Here we have chart. I'm not going to write a chart. I'm going to write a graph.
Because the word chart and the word graph, they mean the same thing most of the time.
Since it's a bar graph, let me show the examiner that I know that this one is called a bar graph. So I'm going to write a bar graph. So it's extra.
A bar graph is when you have rectangles or columns, yeah? It's not a paragraph. Bar graph and paragraph. When you speak Arabic, both of them sound the same. Paragraph. No. Well, here we're teaching English. Bar graph and paragraph. All right. It's a paragraph. Yeah, paragraph. No problem.
When you do this, you actually get extra points because this is a good collocation. Bar graph or bar chart is a good collocation. They normally come together. Okay, so it's a good point. So the supplied bar graph. Here we have shows. We can say illustrates, outlines, demonstrates, compares between. I'm going to go with compares between, or maybe illustrates.
See the options I'm giving you? I'm giving you a lot of options because I love you. Yeah? Illustrates, compares between, shows.
Anything. Illustrates. Here, the total number of minutes. The total number of minutes. Well, you can say, when you say the total number of minutes, this means the duration of calls, of phone calls, technically, yeah? If you want to paraphrase it. So we can say the duration of phone calls, yeah? Because this basically means duration. Or you can just say anything. The amount of time spent on telephone calls. Yeah? Amount of time, duration, anything. Yeah? Let's go with the amount of time. The supplied bar graph illustrates amount of time spent on telephone calls. Yeah? Spent on telephone calls. Okay, so what do we have here? The supplied bar graph illustrates the amount of time spent on telephone calls in the UK, in the United Kingdom. Yeah? Same thing, yeah?
Don't write in England, for example, because there's difference between the United Kingdom, England, and Britain. If you don't know, Google it. Yeah? But the UK means the United Kingdom. Why am I doing this? I'm just trying to paraphrase. Isa, can we say the UK? Yes, you can. But it's better to paraphrase if you can. Okay? So even if you write the UK, it's still correct.
He divided into 3 categories, which means these telephone calls are technically 3 categories, 3 different types of calls. This is the first type, this is the second type, this is the third type. So we can have it here Yeah, we can say divided into 3 types, but you can also, when you paraphrase, it's a good idea to change the order of the words in your sentence.
Order means order.
The supplied bar graph illustrates the amount of time spent on 3 different types of telephone calls. Yeah, we can say T. So we change the order, which is one way of paraphrasing, on 3 different types of telephone calls.
Let me tell you something. When you paraphrase, you can paraphrase not just only by using synonyms and antonyms. There's so many ways through which you can paraphrase. You can use synonyms. You can use antonyms. You can change the structure of the sentence. You can change the order of words. You can combine 2 sentences together. You can change the form of words. There's so many ways that you can use to paraphrase. So here I'm changing the order of words. Okay?
Lovely. So we paraphrase everything up until here. All right. From to, we don't even have to think about this one because I've already told you this. Between and. If you have from to, you write between and. If you have between and, you write from to.
You like this one? From to, you change it to between and. If you have between and, you change it to from to.
Between 1994 and 2001. Okay? Just a quick thing here, just so you don't get confused. Here, in the question, they have this phrase as a parenthetical expression. They do have it as a parenthetical expression. I don't have to have it as a parenthetical expression. I want to use it as a main part of the sentence, okay? So the fact that they have it between 2 commas doesn't mean that you have to have it between 2 commas as well, okay? So let's read our lovely, beautiful introduction. The supplied bar graph illustrates the amount of time spent on 3 different types of telephone calls in the United Kingdom between 1994 and 2001. I think it's lovely, beautiful. You didn't even have to think about it that much, yeah? So the introduction is done.
Now, if we didn't understand the meaning of the word or the phrase parenthetical expression, the phrase parenthetical expression is an expression that is added inside a sentence to give you extra pieces of information that are not necessary. Yeah? Like, for example, you can say, Isa is teaching us the IELTS course, for example. A normal sentence. You can also say, Isa, who is certified by Cambridge University, is teaching us the IELTS course. Because now I'm certified by Cambridge University. Yeah. So who is certified by Cambridge University is a parenthetical expression. It's an expression that you can delete and it's not going to affect the meaning of the sentence. You can say Isa is teaching us the course. Okay? You got what it means? All right. Now we finished the introduction.
Now, step number 2, writing the overview. I don't even have to think when I write the overview. Well, I have to think, but when I write the first part of it, I don't even have to think. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Enter. Enter.
What does enter mean? Enter. Or enter. Here I mean enter, which means you have to separate the paragraphs from each other. Yeah? Why? Coherence. Coherence means to have everything organized. So you have to hit enter to separate the paragraphs.
You skip a line when you do the exam, which means you're going to have clear structure. Paragraphing gives you a good score, okay? So when I say enter, I say it on purpose. Every single word I say in this video means something, okay? All right, our overview. I'm not gonna even think. Overall, comma. In general, comma. Don't ask me. Don't question this. And after that, from the table I showed you in the videos, what stands out from the graph is the graph makes it clear that it is clear that, yeah?
When you start your overview, the first part of the overview is always the same. You always start using this word, overall, comma, or in general, comma. That's why I'm saying, don't even ask me, because I've explained this in the previous videos in the course. Yeah, because this video is part of the course. Yeah. So pay attention to what I'm saying.
These three phrases I told you about. We can say it can be seen from the graph that, or what stands out from the graph. It doesn't matter, yeah? Same thing. It can be seen from the graph. Let me show you something. What do we have here? Graph. What do we have here? Graph. Let's change one of them so we don't repeat the same words again and again and again, and then we get a bad mark in lexical resource. So I'm gonna write chart. Okay? So this part of the overview, don't even ask me about it.
So this is like a fixed expression. Yeah? It can be seen from the chart that what stands out from the chart is. Oh, it's clear that. Fixed. Don't even think about it. Save your energy for task 2. Yeah? Try to work on autopilot or cruise control. Save the energy.
This part, you memorize it by heart. Overall, it can be seen from the chart that. Now we agreed that we're going to be talking about that local fixed lines remained on top, whereas mobiles remained at the bottom. Let's write this piece of information, but we're going to edit the wording after. Okay? So, whereas, yeah, and I'm using whereas because I've already told you before that when you have the overview, this is the best location for you, the best opportunity for you to include a complex sentence, to show comparison and contrast. Since we're showing two different things, we're talking about something that remained the highest and something that remained the lowest. This is a perfect opportunity for you to use the conjunction whereas. Okay? And there's a difference, by the way, between whereas, while, and although. Don't use although here. When you use although, this means whatever you're saying is going to be something opposite or kind of opposite to whatever is going to be after the first clause. For example, when you say, although I was hungry in the morning, I didn't have breakfast. So when you're hungry, I would expect you to have breakfast. But no, you didn't have breakfast. So it's something a little bit unexpected happening. Yeah. So in this case, because it's not something unexpected, it's just a comparison between the highest and the lowest, we can use whereas or we can use while. Okay. So we can go with whereas. And I like normally when I write my complex sentences, I personally like to start with the dependent clause first. Okay. And when you start with the dependent clause first, you have to pay attention to punctuation, which means you have to have a comma after the end of your first clause.
If you're not an English teacher, you're not going to understand anything. Like Sarah for now, for example, she cannot understand what I'm talking about. It's okay. Just focus on the content, yeah? Focus on the content for now. But Toqa knows, for example. And if you don't know and you're English teacher, this is a big problem. Ibrahim, can you wake up? Ibrahim? Ibrahim? Wake up. What's wrong with you? Wake up. You're not the only one who's tired. We're all tired. Wake up. Go wash your face. Wash your face and come back. Yalla, we're waiting for you. We're pausing the lesson. Wash your face. Go wash your face. Go wash your face and come back. I'm waiting for you. Hurry up. Yalla, everyone is waiting for you. Don't make us look bad. You don't want to wash your face? Okay, it's up to you. Pay attention. I want you to pay attention here when we are writing the overview. The overview is the best place for you to get a really good score. Why? Because one of the main things that they ask you to do in task 1 academic is to make comparisons. And the overview is the best paragraph for you to make a good comparison. You can compare a group of information to another group of information by also creating a complex sentence. So you're making a really good comparison, and you're also getting a really good score in grammar because it's a complex sentence. What is a complex sentence? A complex sentence is a sentence that has two parts. While Ibrahim is sleeping, I am teaching. Two different parts. See? Ibrahim is sleeping is one part. Isa is teaching is another part. When you combine them together, it's a complex sentence. Okay, Ibrahim? Okay. All right. So that's why I want to use whereas. You can use whereas, like you can say, whereas Ibrahim is sleeping, Isa is teaching. Or you can also say, while Ibrahim is sleeping, Isa is teaching. You can also say, although Ibrahim doesn't care about Isa's effort and he's sleeping, Isa is teaching. Yeah? Although, whereas, while. And these three conjunctions make the sentence complex. Higher score in grammar. And higher score in task achievement because you're making comparisons. Okay?
So whereas local fixed lines, don't worry about the words. I'm going to change the words. I just want you to focus on the idea now. Whereas local fixed lines were the highest, mobiles were the lowest. I'm going to fix everything, so relax. I'm going to read it. Overall, it can be seen from the chart there. This part, obviously, is correct. Whereas our conjunction, local fixed lines. Oh, there is a mistake here. What is the mistake? See these columns, the yellow columns? These ones, you might think that they represent local fixed lines. No. They represent the number of minutes in billions spent on local calls when you use the fixed lines.
Oh, important. This is going to affect your inaccuracy score. Yeah? So when you read this doesn't mean that the columns represent this. You have to read the y-axis. Yeah? This is what they represent. So pay attention.
Okay? So you have to be careful. So don't tell me in the exam that local fixed lines were the highest. No, they were not the highest. The number of minutes was the highest for this type of calls. Don't tell me mobiles remained at the bottom. No, because they did not remain at the bottom. The number of minutes spent on calls using mobile phones remained at the bottom. So you have to be specific, okay? Because a lot of students make this mistake. So let's fix our overview. It can be seen from the chart that whereas we can say the number of minutes spent on local fixed lines. Well, they're not really local fixed lines, by the way. This is another mistake. It's local calls, because I know it's written that way, but you should understand from the question that we have 3 types of telephone calls. So we're not really spending the minutes on the line, we're spending the minutes on the call using the fixed line. You have to be specific. You have to understand. Do not just read the category and copy and paste. You have to know what you're reading, okay? So, whereas the number of minutes spent on local calls of fixed lines, like the calls that belong to fixed lines. Where? This is a mistake. Why where? Because what we're talking about, we're talking about the number of minutes. The number is singular. So the number of minutes was, yeah? The highest, okay? Mobiles were the lowest. Obviously, this is also another mistake. We're not talking about mobiles. We're talking about, again, the number of minutes spent on calls of mobile phones, yeah? Let's fix it. You can copy. Well, in the exam, you can't copy unless you're doing the computer delivered test. Anyway, fixed local was the highest. The number of minutes spent on, you can say calls of mobiles, or you can say mobile calls. Yeah, because mobile can be an adjective as well, okay? Were, again, it's not were, it's was, because we're talking about the number, okay? Was the lowest. Obviously, this is not the best overview. I'm just showing you how I think. I'm going to fix a lot of things. Overall, it can be seen from the chart that whereas the number of minutes spent on local calls of fixed lines was the highest, the number of minutes, see here, the number of minutes spent on, the number of minutes spent on. So we're repeating the same phrases. So instead of saying the number of minutes spent on, we can simply say it was the lowest for mobile phones. It was the lowest for mobile phones.
Why did I do this? Toqa, because you were playing around. What did I do? Eh? You don't know. You don't know. What did I say? Isn't this how you speak to your students when they play around? Yeah. I changed the words because you do not want to repeat the same words. So instead of saying the number of minutes, the number of minutes, the number of minutes, I mentioned the number of minutes here and then it, which means the number of minutes. Okay, Toqa? Pay attention.
So you're not repeating the same phrase again and again. When I say it, what do I mean by it? I mean the number of minutes spent on the calls. Okay? Let me read it again. Overall, it can be seen from the chart that whereas the number of minutes spent on local calls of fixed lines was the highest, it was the lowest for mobile phones. I don't like it. Why? It sounds a little bit repetitive. Why? Because he was saying the number of minutes was the highest, the number of minutes was the lowest. Instead of saying was, I'm gonna use this verb, remained.
Wow.
Why remained? Because it stayed the lowest. Yeah? And I'm gonna also add another expression just to make it a little bit clearer. I wanna use this expression throughout the period to make it very clear to the examiner that I'm saying that that one remained at the top throughout the period and the other one remained at the bottom throughout the period. So I'm going to be saying overall it can be seen from the graph that, listen to this, throughout the period. I want you to focus on two things here. Number one is that I added it between two commas. What does that tell you? It's a parenthetical expression. It's extra. I'm adding an extra piece of information. So this is number one I want you to pay attention to. Number two, I want you to pay attention to the location where I added this phrase. I added it before my complex sentence. Why? To tell the examiner that when I talk about the first clause, this throughout the period applies to the first clause. And it also applies to the second clause as well. Okay, so it applies to both of them. You can take it off, you can take it away, and you can add it here, by the way. You can say it this way. But when you say it this way, you might risk that the examiner would understand that this one only applies to the second part of the complex sentence. But when you add it before these two clauses, the examiner would know that it applies to both of them. Okay? So we're gonna put it exactly what it was. Another thing I want you to pay attention to, I use the article the with the word period.
Why did I use that? Because you're sleeping. Fran, why did I use that? Wake up. Asma, why did I use that? Your English teacher. Let me know. Because it's known. Nof. Correct. Nof. Nof is the best. No, it's not specific because it was mentioned in the previous paragraph. So we're talking about something that is known to the reader. It's not something that we first introduce. It was introduced in the previous paragraph. Nof. Please clap for Nof using the emojis. How do you clap for Nof? 1 second. How can we clap for Nof? Where are the emojis? I cannot find them. Anyway, you clap instead of me for Nof. Yeah?
What do I mean by the period? The period is the period I mentioned in the introduction, which is between 1994 and 2001. That's why I'm using the period. The means something you know about. Yes, you know about because I already mentioned it in the introduction. Okay, so focus. So let's read it quickly. Overall, it can be seen from the chart that throughout the period, whereas the number of minutes spent on local calls of fixed lines was the highest, it remained the lowest for mobile phones. Okay?
This is the overview. Now I want you to pay attention that in the overview, we try as much as we can to not include any numbers. The overview, we try to make it as general as we possibly can. Yeah, do not mention specific numbers or key features in the overview. Just make a comparison between two groups of information. Yeah. However, when you're writing, for example, when you're describing a process diagram, you have to mention the number of steps. You have to mention a number in that case. But when it comes to graphs and charts, do not mention numbers. Only make general comparisons. Yeah. So here we compared between the fixed lines, these two categories, and the mobiles. Okay, so we finished planning, we finished the introduction, we finished the overview. Now we have to write body paragraph number 1 and body paragraph number 2. Okay? So now when we mention and when we talk about the body paragraphs, we have to mention numbers. We have to make more comparisons. And when you make comparisons, there are two types of comparisons. Comparisons between the categories, like when you compare the local to the national and international and to the mobiles, each one of these ones is called a category. So you compare them to each other. This is one type of comparison. The second type of comparison is when you compare the numbers within the category to each other. How do we do this? I will show you. Ibrahim, are you awake? You're awake. That's good. Okay. Up until now, honestly, Nof is the best. Sorry, Afran. Sorry, Tocha. But Nof is number 1. She's leading now. She's attending all the classes, even though she missed the first class. She's attending on time all the time. She's taking it seriously. She's responding in the chat. She's not liking the YouTube videos, but she will start to like them. She's not commenting on the YouTube videos, but she will start commenting. But up until now, she's leading. Yeah, I made you look bad? No? Okay, so I'm gonna like the YouTube videos now. All right, pay attention. Now, body paragraph number 1.
Now let's talk about the body paragraphs. Inter. Inter means enter, like not you, means enter. Okay.
Same jokes, even 4 years ago. Same jokes. Yeah, same jokes.
So when you write your body paragraph, number one, you have to use an introductory phrase to show the examiner that your body paragraph has a clear theme. Okay, we already agreed that we're going to combine the fixed lines together, and then the mobile phones, we're going to have them in a separate body paragraph.
Can you tell me why do we have to have a clear theme for each body paragraph? Or which marking criterion does this affect when you have a central topic or a clear theme for each paragraph? Nof. We're waiting for Nof. We're waiting for Nof. Coherence. Here you go. Coherence. Here you go. Nof. You're the best. Yeah? No one cares. Only Nof cares. Okay? So we have to have a central topic, a very clear theme for each body paragraph. How do we make it very clear to the examiner that this body paragraph has a very clear theme? When we write an essay, we use what we call Nof. What do we use? What is the first sentence that we use in an essay to make it very clear to the examiner that this paragraph is talking about this specific topic? Topic sentence. Topic sentence. But when it comes to task one, there's no topic sentence. We use what I call an introductory phrase, a group of words at the beginning of a sentence to make it very clear to the examiner that this paragraph is going to be talking about this specific topic. Pay attention. Now, if up until now, you're leading by miles, you're running circles around them, as they say. No one is even close to you.
So since we're going to be combining the fixed lines together, I'm going to be saying something like this. Regarding the fixed lines, in terms of the fixed lines, as far as the fixed lines are concerned. Yeah? Any one of the phrases that I already taught you in the course. All right, so we're going to be saying something like this. In terms of the fixed lines.
See now, when you say this to the examiner, in terms of the fixed lines, it's very clear that this body paragraph is talking about what? The fixed lines. So you can say in terms of the fixed lines. You can say regarding the fixed lines, comma. You can say with regard to the fixed lines. You can say in regard to the fixed lines. You can say concerning the fixed lines. You can say as far as the fixed lines are concerned. So many different phrases that I teach you in the course. Pay attention.
Using the article the, because I've already spoke about the fixed lines previously. Okay? So in terms of the fixed lines, now I want you to focus. This is getting serious now. I'm going to start talking about the national and international calls. You can start talking about these ones, or you can start talking about these ones. It doesn't make a difference. Okay? I'm going to start with the easy one. But when you want to start talking about your body paragraphs, you have to pay attention to the key features.
What does key features mean? No. Now I'm putting a lot of pressure on you. No, key features, what does it mean? We have to mention key features, the main trends. There you go. Key means important. Important features means important numbers. The starting numbers, the finishing numbers, the maximum numbers, the minimum numbers, the identical numbers, the stable numbers. All of these ones are considered to be key features, aka main features, aka main numbers, aka important numbers. Clear? He said clear. AKA, please continue.
What pieces of information are you going to include in your body paragraph? You remember when we spoke about the key features? When we have a chart with a timeline, I told you the starting point, the finishing point, the maximum point, the minimum point. When you have identical figures, when you have stable figures, all these ones are key features. But the most important key features that you should include in all of your reports are the starting figure and the ending figure.
The word figure means a number. Yeah? Starting figure means the starting number. So when you have a graph, you have to mention the first number here. The first number, and the finishing number. Yeah? Tuqa. Yeah?
So you have to talk about this point here and this point here, no matter what. And you have to talk about this point here and this point here, no matter what. And you have to talk about this point here and this point here, no matter what.
So if you notice, the least or the fewest numbers that we can speak about is 6 numbers, because we have 3 bars, and each one of the bars has a starting number and a finishing number. So 2 numbers per bar. 2 multiplied by 3, 8, correct? No, not. It's 6. 6. 2 multiplied by 3 is 6. Wake up. I'm testing you. Shaking your head. Okay? So the least or the fewest numbers that we should mention in our report is 6 numbers. Or 8, Asma. Whatever you want, Isa. 9? 9. That's 6. That's the minimum number. Yeah? I always test my students, so you have to wake up. Don't just shake your head. Before you shake your head, ask yourself. Use your brain, okay? Isa, I used it in the morning. I do not want to use it anymore now. No, use it now, please. Okay?
So you have to mention at least 6 numbers in your report. You can add extra ones if you want to, but the other ones, they could be a little bit optional. Yeah? So we're going to be talking about the national and international calls. So we want to say this, that regarding the international and national calls, the number of minutes increased from this number and reached this number. Obviously, there's nothing else to talk about regarding this one. Yeah? You can think of this bar graph as a line graph. If you have a line, if you connect all these dots together, it's going to look like a line graph. Okay? So we're going to simply talk about the starting number and the ending number.
So we only have 2 key features for national and international calls. Why? Because we have the starting number, which is also the minimum number, and we have the ending number, which is also the maximum number. So it's only 2 numbers. We have to mention them.
So we can say the number of minutes. I'm going to change this phrase. I just want to show you how we get it done. The number of minutes spent on national and international calls. Now we want to describe an increase. How do we describe an increase? We have 2 methods. Method number 1, you have the verb and the adverb. Method number 2, you have the verb, which is experience or see or witness, and then the adjective, and then one of the words, increase or growth or rise. Yeah? So we can use either way. Let's just use the first method, which is one of the verbs and then one of the adverbs that describes the rate of change.
Obviously, you understood nothing. Let me show you a graph before we keep going, so you can link it, because I know you're just going to be shaking your head as if you understood. But let me show you so you really understand what I'm talking about. This is from our course, exclusive content. Don't tell anyone about it, even though it's going to be on YouTube. But let me show you this slide. When you have a graph with a timeline, there are 3 different types of increases and also 3 different types of decreases. You have a minor increase, an average increase, and a major increase. Each one of them, when you want to talk about it, you have to use different verbs, different adjectives, different adverbs. Take a screenshot. Take a screenshot. Isa, I already took before you even telling me. Okay, smart. Pay attention, because now when I'm explaining, I'm going to be using this table. Look here. When there's a minor change, well, there's 2 different ways to describe an increase or a decrease. A verb and an adverb. This is method number 1. When you have a verb and an adverb. The verbs, we only have 3. And you have to remember them like your name. Like, what's your name? My name is Salman, who's not attending today. How do you describe an increase? By 3 different verbs. Grow, rise, increase. Grow, rise, increase. Grow, rise, increase. These are the verbs that you're going to use. Now, based on the rate of increase, you're going to change the adverb. If it's a minor increase, you can say slowly or slightly. If it's an average increase, you can say significantly, substantially, considerably. If it's a major increase, you can say dramatically and drastically. If it's a crazy increase, you say skyrocket or soar. Take a screenshot, because I'm going to be using this table when I'm explaining. Isa, I already took a screenshot. I like this table, Isa. Okay. So this is method number 1, when you have a verb and an adverb. And this is what we call, by the way, in the course, the trend language. When you have a chart with a timeline, we have to use trend language to describe it. Now, this is method number 1. Method number 2 is this. When you have a verb with an adjective and with a noun. Which verbs demonstrate, achieve, maintain, experience, see? These ones, see here where the cursor is, you can use them interchangeably. And you should add to them an adjective and then a noun. Now, the adjective, previously, it was an adverb. You remember in the previous slide, we used to say slowly, slightly, significantly, substantially, considerably, dramatically, drastically. Now we change them into adjective. The verbs in the previous slide, we made them nouns. Grow became growth. Rise became rise. Not rice. When you have chicken, rise means going up. Increase became increase. But this is the noun version. Okay? Take a screenshot, because now I'm going to be using these methods to write the report. Tuqa, did you check the notification on your Apple Watch? All good? Good. Okay? Now, back to our report. You took 3 screenshots, I'm assuming, yeah? Good. Focus. What I'm saying now is going to be related to the table I just showed you.
So, what sort of increase do we have here? Is it a slight increase? Is it an average increase? Is it a major increase? I think it's kind of a slight increase, I would say. Yeah? Not very slight. We can say a steady or a gradual increase. Okay? You remember the table? I'm going to use one of these adjectives. I'm going to use the adjective steady or gradual. But in this case, obviously, it's not an adjective, it's an adverb. So increased steadily. Okay?
So which method did I use? The verb with the adverb. Increased steadily. I could have said rose steadily. Rose is the past of Rise. Not rose from the Titanic. Okay? And I could have also said grew, which is the past of grow. Okay? Rise, grow, increase. You can use them interchangeably. Okay?
Steadily or gradually, you can say. Okay? So, the number of minutes spent on national and international calls increased steadily. I can have a full stop here because the sentence makes sense, but when you do this, you're going to get a 0 because you didn't mention any key features. So now you have to mention some key features without adding another sentence. You don't have to add another sentence.
What do I mean by key features here? A key feature is a number, technically. You have to mention a number. In this sentence, we still do not have a number. Yeah? We have to mention a number. Starting point or ending point, yeah?
How? By using the parenthetical expression. How? By having a comma. And then, listen to this. We're going to add the participle clause I told you about, which means it's going to be a verb ending with an ing. So we're going to be saying this. Increasing from this number, which is roughly, let's say, 25 here, and this one is 50.
What is this number? What do you think is the starting figure of the blue bar? What is the number? Please type it in the comments because you're sleeping. 40. Men are saying 40. Najwa is saying 40. 35, 43, 35. Okay, all of you are getting a 0 in the exam. Nof is the only one who's not going to get a 0 because he said approximately. This number is not 40. It's not 38. It's not 39. You cannot read it properly. So you cannot be very exact. It's an approximate number. A rough number. Let's clap for Nof again because she deserves it. No, clap using emojis. Please, yeah? Let's encourage everyone. Yeah? So this is a problem that a lot of students make. Sorry. So this is a problem that a lot of students face. And a mistake a lot of students make, which is using inaccurate numbers, which affects task achievement. So pay attention. Ibrahim, is it clear? Clear, Ibrahim. Okay, good.
So maybe, I don't know, 37 or 38. Let's say 38. From 38, I'm making a mistake here, so you wake up, yeah? Increasing from 38 minutes, another mistake, so you wake up, yeah? From 38 minutes in, you have to mention the year, obviously, 1994 to another mistake. We're going to mention this number here. So this one is 50, this one is 75. It's roughly underneath half of the distance, so maybe 63, 62, roughly 62, yeah? So to 62 minutes in 2001.
Najwa is saying, Isa, you're making a mistake. It's a spent, not spend. I make mistakes because I want you to wake up. Not because I'm making mistakes. Isa, who do you think you are? You don't make mistakes. Aren't you a human? I am a human, but because this video is edited, yeah? So pay attention.
Many mistakes. Why? Because I want you to wake up. In
Wait.
terms of the fixed lines, the number of minutes, this one obviously it's not spend, it's spent. The number of minutes spent
Najwa.
on national and international calls increased steadily. This is fine. Increasing, we're repeating word, which is not a good thing, from 38 minutes. 38 minutes is when you talk to your friend before you go to bed. But when you talk about a country, it's not 38 minutes, it's 38 billion minutes, my friend. So you have to wake up. This is a mistake a lot of students make. They don't pay attention to the units of measurements, yeah? So 38 billion minutes. And it's not billions. it's billion. Because I've already told you, when you have a specific number, you don't have the S. So it's 38 billion minutes in 1994 to 62, again, billion minutes in 2001.
You don't say billions. Yeah? When you say, I have $200 million, you do not say, I have $200 million. It's dollars already. There is an S. So it's $200 million, even though it's 200, but it's million. Okay? So pay attention. These are the mistakes that the students make. And the teachers as well, who sleep during the class.
Another mistake, he was saying it's 38 billion minutes. Who told you this? You might be telling me, well, it's he. Well, maybe this one is 37 billion. Maybe it's 37.5. Maybe it's 37.9. So since you're not confident, what do you use? About, around, almost, approximately. Yeah? So we're going to use about to be in the safe side, so we avoid inaccuracy, so we get a good score under task response. So increasing from about 38 billion minutes in 1994, same thing applies to this number. We're not going to be saying about because we mentioned about already, so we can say around. So we don't repeat the same words again and again and again. If you notice, what verb did we use here? We used the verb increased. And then we mentioned increased again, or increasing. So instead of using the same verb, we can change one of them. You remember I told you the GRI, grow, rise, increase. You can use them interchangeably. Since this one is increased, we can use rise. So rising from. Okay, let's read this first sentence again. In terms of the fixed lines, the number of minutes spent on national and international calls, I don't like this one because I used it, focus, yeah, I used it here. The number of minutes spent on, yeah, number of minutes. So let's change one of them. Let's change this one. Number of minutes.
Can you give me alternatives for this? Instead of saying the number of minutes, what can we say? The amount of time, Najwa is saying. Good. The amount of time is good. But I used it already. Yeah. Call time. Good, Asma. You watched the previous course. Because Asma was enrolled in one of my courses. That's why she knows. Yeah. Call time. Yeah. They mentioned them. Okay. So we should change this phrase so we do not repeat the same phrase again and again and again, because this affects our score under which marking criterion? Amar, tell us in the chat. If you keep using the same words and phrases again and again and again, what does it affect? Task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, or grammatical range and accuracy? Okay. Lexical resource. Good. No, not the grammatical range. It's only lexical resource. Pay attention.
We can say time spent, but we can also use another thing. We can say the duration, for example, or we can say the amount of time, which we mentioned it here, but let's use something else. We can say the call time, which also means the same thing. The call time, which means the amount of time spent on calls. Call time. It's a good collocation as well, okay? And the reason I'm using different things because I want to get a good score under the lexical resource, yeah? So in terms of fixed lines, call time, not spent, you don't spend on call time. Call time, it's time already, yeah? So call time for national and international calls increased steadily, rising from about 38 billion minutes in 1994 to around 62 billion minutes in 2001. I think this one is already lovely, yeah? We spoke about the blue columns. Now let's talk about the yellow ones. We're going to be mentioning how many figures, how many numbers. Obviously, the starting point, we have to mention this number. the finishing point, we have to mention this number. And here, we should mention the maximum point because it reached the maximum in 1998. So I think we should mention this one.
So how many key figures for the local fixed lines we should mention? That's my saying too. It's 3. Why 3? Because we have the starting point, the finishing point. We also have a maximum point that we should mention. That's smart. You watch the course and you're already giving us wrong answers. That's bad. I should give you a refund. You used to give me a refund. Yeah. Pay attention.
Okay? We have to mention this number. Okay? So we have to mention this, and this, and this. So 3 numbers. So you have to pay attention now to what we call the stage language. You remember the stage language we spoke about? Then after that, following this, yeah? So you have to pay attention because here we have 2 stages. From here to here, 1 stage. From here to here, another stage. So let's focus. We can say, again, the number of minutes, again, we have to repeat one of them, yeah? So we can say, again, we can use this phrase again, amount of time, because it's been far away now. We can use it again, no problem, yeah? So we can say the amount of time spent on, we're going to be talking about the local calls now, local calls. I want to speak about the increase here, from here to here, okay? So increased, I'm not going to use increase. I'm going to use the verb grow because we used increase, we used rise, yeah? We used increase, we used rise. Let's use the third verb that we know, which is grow. Okay, so we're going to write, not grow, we're going to write grew because it's in the past.
You always have to pay attention to the years that we have here in the past. So don't say grows, for example. It's in the past. Grew, rose, increased. Yeah. If it's in the future, you have to predict the future. You should say it's expected to rise. It's expected to increase. It is expected to grow. Cool?
The amount of time spent on local calls grew. We can describe the rate as well. We can say steadily, but I'm not going to say steadily again. I can say gradually now because we already used the adverb steadily. The amount of time spent on local calls grew gradually. Okay, so now I mentioned the increase from here to here, but I have to mention the key features because I'm being very generally. How? By adding a parenthetical expression, okay? We can say rising from roughly here. What do we have? 50, 75.
What is the number that we have here? Please type it in the comments. What is the number? What is the starting figure for local fixed lines? For the local calls? About 70? Nearly 70? Approximately 70? Around 70? Roughly 75? No, not roughly 75. It's very far away from 75, yeah? I think it's around 72, 73. Around, approximately, yeah? Nof said almost 70. Unfortunately, for this time, I'm going to give Nof a 0. Because when you say almost means it hasn't reached 70 yet. So almost if it's under 70. So to be safe, if you don't know if it's under or above, use around, approximately, about. Because almost means it's just under. Okay?
Maybe 72 or 73, roughly, yeah? Rising from, I'm not going to make the mistake again. I don't want to waste your time. So approximately, because we're not sure what the number is, from approximately 72 billion minutes in 1994 to around, and then we have to mention this number. Let's say this is 75, this is 100. So it's roughly maybe 90, roughly 90, yeah? Roughly 90 or 91 or 92, doesn't matter. Okay, to around 90 billion minutes in 1998. I want you to focus because I'm gonna edit. It doesn't look the best, yeah? Look here. The amount of time spent on local calls grew gradually, okay, rising from approximately 72 billion minutes in 1994 to around 90 billion minutes in 1998. When you read this sentence on its own, it sounds fine. But when you read it with the previous sentence, it doesn't sound fine. It sounds very repetitive. Let's read them together. I'm going to show you where the mistakes are. In terms of fixed lines, call time for national and international calls increased steadily, rising from about 38 billion minutes in 1994 to around 62 billion minutes in 2001. The amount of time spent on local calls grew gradually, rising from approximately 72 billion minutes in 1994 to around 90 billion minutes in 1998.
Who knows what is the problem here? Why am I going to edit the second sentence? What's wrong with the second sentence? Type something. Talking to you. Toqa is saying you're repeating rising. Yes, correct. We're repeating the word rising. Same words, yes. Same structure. The first sentence and the second sentence, they have very similar structure. Yeah. So it's repetitive. Yeah. So we need to make it a little bit more different. So focus and see how am I going to make it different.
Focus here. First of all, when we shifted from talking about the national and international calls to local calls, the shifting was very abrupt, very sudden. There's no cohesive device that links these two sentences together. They're very separated. So I want to add something to make the shifting natural. Look what I'm going to be doing now.
You know when you ride in a taxi and the taxi has like a manual key? Yeah. When the taxi driver shifts from one key to another key, and if you feel it, is this a good thing or a bad thing? When you feel the shift between the keys, is this good or bad? It's bad. But when you have a professional taxi driver, when they shift the key and you don't feel it, this means he's a good driver. So when you're moving from one idea to another idea in a natural way, this means you're doing a good job. See this natural way? This is the cohesive device. When you have this cohesive device, this means you're moving from one sentence to another sentence naturally, like this. So look how I'm going to be making it more natural.
The amount of time spent on local calls also grew gradually. See, sounds more natural now. Rising from, I want you to focus, look here, from approximately blah, 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 blah. Look here, look at this part and look at this part. This part and this part. They are exactly the same. They are exactly the same. We can't keep them like that. You're going to be losing points. We have to fix one of them, yeah? First of all, this one is rising and this one is rising. We have to change one of them. We can change this one. We can say increasing. Increasing from here, 72 billion minutes in 1994. I'm going to delete 1994 because I've already mentioned it here. I'm not going to be repeating the same dates again and again and again. So you use this technique. You delete this E and you use this adjective, increasing from a starting figure of approximately 72 billion minutes.
Wow, I like this one. Who likes it as well? You said no one likes it. Like it because you cannot just repeat the same numbers. You have to change them. Yeah, focus.
In 1994, a starting figure, because we're talking about this period. So the starting figure, the starting number, represents the number at the start of this period. Okay, so increasing from starting figure, which means a number of approximately 72 billion minutes to around 90 billion minutes in 1998. There's one thing that we missed. We're not really missed. I'm just testing you because I want you to wake up, because it's very important here. What is this number? The 90 billion minutes. Why did we mention this number?
What is this number? Type in the comments. What is this number? Aya, Minna, Asma, Nof, Ibrahim, Omar. What is this number? Why did we mention this number? Why is this number a key feature? Why is it an important number? It's an ending point? No, zero. Tuqa. Ending figure? Zero. Zaya, the peak? Nof. Yes, the maximum number. It's the highest number. So since it's the highest number or the maximum number, we should mention that in the sentence. Focus.
What is this number? The 90 billion minutes. Why did we mention this number? We mentioned this number because this is the highest point. We didn't mention that's the highest point. You have to mention it. Yeah? So look here. Increasing from a starting figure of approximately 72 billion minutes to a peak of 90 billion minutes in 1998 to a high of 90 billion minutes. Yeah? So we have to write this word. From approximately 72 billion minutes to a peak of around 90 billion minutes in 1998. Okay, I think now looks lovely. When you read it, sounds more natural.
So you can say a peak of, or a high of, or a maximum of. Yeah? There are different ways of describing the highest number or the maximum number. Mena, we'll finish this paragraph and then we take a break and then we'll do the second paragraph, okay? We still have 5 minutes. Okay, pay attention because the way I'm writing this essay is technically going to be almost the same for all the line graphs or graphs with a timeline. Same concept. Yeah, I know it's overwhelming because it's the first time you look at it. But it's easy, trust me. If you keep doing it, if you have a template in your mind, it's going to be easy. Yeah, because when I write, I do not really think that much because I have everything in my subconscious mind. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Now we spoke about this figure. We mentioned this figure. Now we have to keep going till we reach this figure. So we have to use some stage language, sequencing language. Okay, so we want to say.
So when I say stage language or sequencing language, this is the language that you use to describe a sequence of events. Like then, after that, after which. This is what we call the sequencing language or the stage language. Yeah. So we have the trend language, we have the stage language, we also have composition language, we have directions language, we have a lot of languages. And we also have the English language. Okay.
This number then decreased to reach a final figure of blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you can say something like this. we're not going to be saying the number of minutes again and again and again. That's why we're going to be using this figure or this number referring back to the number of minutes. Okay? Remember when I told you about how to avoid repeating the same category again and again and again? So
one way of paraphrasing, as I told you, is using synonyms, words that mean the same thing. Yeah? Or defining the word. You can define the word. And you can also change the order of words. You can also combine two sentences together. One of the ways to paraphrase is when you use referencing. Technically, using pronouns. For example, Omar is sitting in a coffee shop. Omar is eating. Instead of saying Omar, you can say he. He is a pronoun that refers back to whom? To Omar. Correct? So this is called referencing, using a pronoun. Instead of saying he, you can say, this guy is studying for the IELTS. This guy means Omar. So this is referencing. I'm using the words this guy instead of using Omar again and again and again. Correct, Omar? Yeah, Isa, correct. I'm sitting in a coffee shop.
number, I'm not going to use figure because I mentioned the word figure already before. So I'm going to use number. This number, listen to this sequencing language. Then,
wow,
it's one of the simplest devices, but one of the most important ones. This number, then, I want to say decreased, but I'm not going to say decreased. You know why? Because I want to use another method of expressing a decrease or an increase. I'm not going to be using the verb with the adverb because...
So we have two different ways. We have the verb with the adverb, like to increase, gradually, increase, dramatically, increase, considerably, a verb and an adverb. And we have another method, which is verb plus an adjective plus a noun. To see a substantial increase, to experience a dramatic decrease, to witness a gradual decrease. So now I'm going to be using the second method, the second screenshot I told you to take. So pay attention.
Decreased. You know why? Because I want to use another method of expressing a decrease or an increase. I'm not going to be using the verb with the adverb because we've used this method multiple times. I want to use the second method of expressing a decrease, which is this method, this number. Then, so a gradual decrease.
Wow.
So, or experienced, or witnessed. Yeah? So one of the verbs I taught you. This number, then, so, a gradual decrease. And then I'm going to add the final figure. Okay? How can I add the final figure? I can add a parenthetical expression to add an extra piece of information without adding another sentence. So I'm going to have a comma, reaching around, what is the final figure? Let's say it's 73 billion minutes in 2001. I'm going to read this body paragraph and I want you to focus on how we shift from one sentence to another naturally. Okay, let's read. In terms of the fixed lines, call time for national and international calls increased steadily, rising from about 38 billion minutes in 1994 to around 62 billion minutes in 2001. The amount of time, see here, the amount of time, it's not natural, but when you read it now, with the word also, it's going to sound natural. The amount of time spent on local calls also grew gradually, increasing from a starting figure of approximately 72 billion minutes to a peak of around 90 billion minutes in 1999. This number then saw a gradual decrease. This one is reaching around 73 billion minutes in 2001. Let me tell you something. Look here. Billion minutes. Billion minutes. Billion minutes. Billion minutes. Billion minutes. This is no good. Remember I told you when you want to talk about the units of measurements, do not keep repeating the same unit again and again and again. You can use it multiple times here and there, but in some areas, there's no need to mention the word minutes. Because when you say 72 billion or 73 billion, it's understood that you're talking about minutes, okay? But when you start the body paragraph or when you start a certain sentence, you can mention the full unit. But if you're mentioning the same unit again within the same sentence, there's no need to mention the full unit because it's boring, okay? So here I'm gonna delete minutes, and here I'm gonna delete minutes. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can delete this one as well, but this is fine as long as you're not using them very close to each other. Okay.
Like when you say, for example, Mark Zuckerberg has $70 billion, but Elon Musk has $200 billion. We can, instead of saying $200 billion, we can say 200 billion, correct? Because we're talking about dollars in this case. It's commonly understood that we're talking about dollars. Yeah. But you should mention the full unit of measurement at the start. Okay. So this is the end of the first body paragraph. Let's take a break because all of you are going to cry now. A break, and then the second body paragraph is going to be short. It's going to be short, and then we're going to be doing the proofreading. Let's take a break for 5 minutes. Minna, yalla. You always complain. You're never satisfied. A break for 2 minutes, so 5 minutes. But not worry, the second body paragraph is a little bit shorter. Why? Because we're only going to be talking about mobile phones. It's going to be short. Sarah, you asked me a question, but because I was explaining, I didn't answer it. Sarah was saying, what happens if you repeat the same words? Like, why do you keep changing the words? Remember when I told you we have 4 marking criteria? One of them is lexical resource, which means vocabulary. If you keep repeating the same words, this tells the examiner that you only know a very small number of words. That's why you keep repeating them. But if you keep changing them, this means you have a good range of words, so you get a higher score. Okay, so it's going to affect your score. Isa, I want to get a 4. If you want to get a 4 or 5, it's fine. I'm serious. Like if you want to get a 5, do not worry that much about it. It's okay. You can repeat some words. You know what I mean? But if you want to get a 7 and above, you have to pay attention. Shall we start? We'll not start. Continue. Okay. Yalla.
Now let's move and speak about the second body paragraph. And the second body paragraph is going to be about mobile. Okay? So when you want to start your body paragraph, we have to start with our introductory phrase. Here we said in terms of fixed lines. When you start the body paragraph number 2, you're not going to say in terms of mobiles.
How can we start body paragraph number 2? Please write in the comments. Yeah. And wake up. According to, no, 0. 0 tuqa. According to is when you want to talk about an opinion of someone. According to tuqa, it's wrong. Or according to Nof, it's right. Wrong tuqa. Nof, show them. Show them how it's done. Yeah? Mobile calls, on the other hand, blah, blah, blah. You can say, moving to mobile phones, blah, blah, blah. Concerning mobile phones, blah, blah, blah. With regard to mobile phones, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? But do not repeat the same phrase that we used for the same body paragraph. Do not say, in terms of the mobile phones. No, it's repetitive. Yeah? Thank you, no. Toqa, you're going to get a 0.
You have to use something different because otherwise you're going to sound repetitive. You can say regarding mobiles. You can say as far as mobiles are concerned. You can say turning to mobile phones, moving to mobile phones. Okay? Mobile phones, on the other hand. Yeah? So you have to be a little bit creative.
Like no.
I'm going to use mobile phones on the other hand. In my opinion, in this case, it makes a good shift from one body paragraph to another body paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this. Enter mobile phones, comma, on the other hand. Okay, mobile phones on the other hand. You have to use these two commas when you use it this way.
It's a perfect cohesive device as well, because when you say on the other hand, this means that there was a first hand, and this is the second hand. This means you're linking the paragraphs to each other. Thank you, Aya.
All right, let's have a look at the mobile phones. What numbers we're going to be mentioning in this body paragraph? Are going to be mentioning this number and this number only, or we're going to be mentioning something else? Well, honestly, you can just mention this one and you should be fine. I can't really see anything that stands out that much. But if you want to be a little bit more attentive to detail, you can also mention this number. Why? Look at the mouse. Well, not really the mouse, the cursor. Why? Because if you notice, the rate of change from here to here is slight, whereas the rate of change from here to here is a little bit more steady, we can say. It's a little bit more steeper, yeah? So it's not exactly the same rate of change.
Remember the screenshot that you took that described the different increases? We have slow, and we have gradual, and we have drastic. Yeah? 3 different rates. He, 1998, this year, divides the increase into 2 rates. From 1994, it's a slow increase, and from 1994 to 1998, it's a slow increase, and then from 1998 to 2002, it's a little bit steeper. Yeah? That's why I wanted to use this key figure, the one that happens in 1998, because it's like the separation between the 2 rates of change. Do you have to mention it? You do not really have to mention it. You can just get away with the starting number and the finishing number, it's fine. But because the paragraph is going to be very short, you might as well add another number.
Okay? So we can talk about this point, and this point. Okay? Let's talk about these 3 points. Obviously, we have to start with this starting figure. You have to. So let's say something that looks like this. Mobile phones, on the other hand, let's say something about these mobile phones and that they were the minimum. Look at, it's a very small number. So we can, because this is also a key feature, it's the smallest number in the entire graph, this one. So we can say mobile phones, on the other hand, started this period. When I say the period, it means the period I already spoke about. Mobile phones, on the other hand, started the period. Obviously, you can't do this in the exam. You can't right click and autocorrect. Yeah? So don't get carried away. Started the period as I want to make a comparison now. I want to say that it was the least used method of communication.
We should all clap for Tuqa because she keeps laughing at the jokes. No one laughs at the jokes. She's the only one who uses emojis to laugh at the jokes. So thank you, Tuqa. Let's clap for her to encourage everyone to laugh. You can use emojis if you laugh. It's fine. Like even when you smile, give an emoji. It makes me feel good about myself. Otherwise, I'm not going to be telling you any jokes. I'm going to be very serious. Do you want me to be serious? No. I have to tell you jokes. I study these jokes before the lecture.
Because the amount of time spent on these calls is the minimum. So we can say started the period as the minimum, or not the minimum, as the least popular form of communication.
Pay attention to something here. Now I'm looking at the numbers from another angle. I'm not just saying, oh, this is the maximum number, this is the minimum number, this is the starting number, this is the ending number. No. Now I'm talking about it from another angle. This is the most popular way. What does that mean? The number is the maximum. When you say the most popular or the most used, you know what I mean? So instead of saying maximum, minimum, no, saying the most popular, the least used method of communication. You got it? So I'm describing the number. Is it clear? Okay. Tuqa, you don't have to laugh now because this is not a joke. It's a serious thing. She didn't laugh. She didn't laugh. Imagine if she laughed. Eh? Okay.
So now I made the comparison between the mobile phones and all the other methods of communication. Now I want to add the number. I want to add an extra piece of information without adding a sentence. So I'm going to be using the parenthetical expression. So comma, and then I'm going to be mentioning this number, which I think is maybe 3 or 4.
What is this number? 3, 4, or 5? 3? Maybe 4. 2.9 maybe? You're even lazy to type instead of doing this. Type. Yeah? Roughly, around, approximately.
Billion minutes. Okay? So I'm going to be saying with around 3 billion minutes. Obviously, we're going to be mentioning the entire unity because it's the first sentence of the paragraph. So it's recommended to mention the entire unity. With around 3 billion minutes of calls. Yeah. Mobile phones, on the other hand, started the period as the least popular form of communication with around 3 billion minutes of calls.
Have you noticed when I read it? It is shifting, or it's moving from one body paragraph to another in a very natural way. When you say mobile phones, on the other hand, blah, blah, blah. See, on the other hand is the cohesive device that makes the transition very natural.
With around 3 billion minutes of calls. Yeah. To make it a little bit more specific and to show that it's the minimum or it's the least popular one, you can say with only around 3 billion minutes of calls. Only. We're using the word only. With only around 3 billion minutes of calls. Come on. So now we mentioned this figure. Okay? And then we're going to describe this increase, which is a steady or slow increase. Okay? So we can say something that looks like this. You can say this number thereafter, which means after this, witnessed a slow growth reaching around this number here. But this way we're gonna make it a little bit longer than it should be. This technique is when you want to add 2 stages using 1 sentence.
See, if you want to add 2 stages using 1 sentence, it's a very good chance to use a complex sentence. Yeah. And now I'm gonna show you how you can compare 2 numbers for the same category in 1 sentence. It's gonna increase your score when it comes to the grammar part, because you're gonna be using a complex sentence. Let's look at it.
You add 2 stages of an increase or a decrease using 1 sentence. You use this structure. You start with this. Always you start with an ing. Having experienced a slow increase, having experienced or witnessed, doesn't make a difference, a slow increase or growth or rise until 1998, comma, so this is the structure, yeah? Having witnessed a slow growth until 1998.
So this is a complex sentence because you're technically having 2 pieces of information in 1 sentence. When you say having witnessed a slow growth until 1998, this means after experiencing a slow growth in 1998. Okay, what happens after this? See? Focus.
Then what happened?
What happens?
Mobile calls increased considerably, reaching a final figure of blah, 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 and then we finish. Okay? So you're adding 2 stages in 1 sentence. It's like saying this is like saying after witnessing blah, 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 something else happened. Yeah? So it's like using after and before. So having witnessed a slow growth until 1998, we can say mobile calls, then you have to mention the word then here. Yeah? Then, so it's a stage language. Mobile calls then increased because we haven't mentioned the word increased a lot, that much. We only mentioned it 2 times maybe.
To describe an increase, I told you have 3 words. Increase, grow, rise. Obviously, you can use them as verbs, you can use them as nouns. But if you use them, if you use all of them, you have to repeat some of them, obviously. Yeah, because there's only 3. Yeah? So sometimes you have to use them because you do not really have an unlimited number of words that you can use. Yeah? You technically only have 6. Rise, increase, grow, and rise, increase, growth. Verbs and nouns. So you have to mix them up.
Mobile calls then increased. If you say mobile calls increased, you're going to be losing marks because the calls do not increase.
Why do you think you're going to lose marks if you say mobile calls increased? Why? Even though they increased. Look at the table or look at the graph. They increased from 1998 to 2001. We're waiting for Nof. Everyone is waiting for Nof. Nof is saying it's the minutes that increased. It's not the calls. Yeah? For example, let's say Omar. Omar is 80 kilos. For example, can we say Omar increased? No. His weight increased. He said, but I'm on a diet. I decreased. No, your weight decreased. You got it? Do you get upset, Omar? He said, don't mention my name. When you mention examples, don't mention my name. I don't like it.
The call does not, what does that mean? The call increased, like it became bigger? No. The number of minutes increased. The number increased, not the call itself. You know what I mean? But when you want to talk about the call, you can say mobile calls increased in popularity, which means they became more popular.
Let's welcome Salman. Let's clap for him to encourage him. Let's clap for Salman. Salman, we've been waiting for you. There's another guy who's missing, Ali. I think Ali Ismail is missing, but it's okay. But let's wait for Salman. He's a dentist. He was probably pulling out a wisdom tooth, maybe. That's why he's been a little bit late. Okay? All right, let's pay attention.
Which means the number of minutes spent on them increased. Okay, so be careful when you use the categories. Know what is increasing and what is decreasing. Do not just use the category itself. Okay, mobile calls then increased considerably. You can say considerably because I think it's a sharp increase, to be honest. Look, it's pretty sharp. Yeah, mobile calls then increased considerably. You can say finishing at around blah blah blah, yeah, using a parenthetical expression. But there's no need to use a parenthetical expression all the time. You can, but because we used it in many areas, we don't have to use it again. We can say to reach or to finish at around blah blah blah. To finish at around. So this one is 25, 47 roughly. Not 47, 24, this is like 37, 40 or 42 maybe, roughly, yeah? To finish at around 42 billion minutes in 2001. Let me read the second body paragraph again. Mobile phones, on the other hand, started the period as the least popular form of communication, with only around 3 billion minutes of calls. Lovely. Having witnessed a slow growth until 1998, yeah, what happened? When mobile calls then increased considerably, I didn't mention in popularity. See, if you just say it this way, it doesn't make sense logically, yeah? Mobile calls increased in popularity, yeah? So mobile calls then increase considerably in popularity to finish at around 42 billion minutes in 2001. I don't like it that much, to be honest, because it says like mobile calls finished at around 42 billion minutes. Let me make it a little bit clearer. Mobile calls then increased considerably in popularity to reach a number of minutes of 42 billion in 2001, to make it a little bit clearer. Yeah, mobile calls then increased considerably in popularity, yeah, to reach a number of minutes of around 42 billion. Obviously, we're not going to be saying minutes again, in 2001. I think it looks lovely, okay?
We haven't finished yet. Because remember in the exam, what did I tell you? You have to spend some time on planning, some time on reading, and some time on proofreading. So now I'm going to show you how am I going to proofread. When you proofread, you can increase your score by 1 band easily. If you fix some grammar mistakes, some spelling mistakes, some punctuation mistakes. Okay? Before we keep going, by the way, we're going to finish very soon, yeah? Let's clap for Abdurrahman because he just joined us, and let's welcome him. Oh, he just turned the camera on. Welcome, Abdurrahman. MashaAllah, very good students.
Now, in the exam, you should be proofreading. When you proofread, you read the entire report, you double check, you see your mistakes. If you missed a full stop, a comma, you made a spelling mistake or something along those lines. Let's read it like when we are in the exam. And when you read, by the way, you read as if you're talking to someone. So when there's a comma, you take a pause. when the full stop, you take a longer pause. So you can feel the transition between the sentences. Okay? Let's have a read. The supplied bar graph illustrates the amount of time spent on 3 different types of telephone calls in the United Kingdom between 1994 and 2001. This is something that I don't really like that much. I'm going to change this one. I'm going to say compare between. I think it makes more sense. Yeah? Compares between, illustrates the amount of time. It's also correct, but I just want to show you that you can use different things. I personally I think compares between the amounts of time sounds better. Yeah? Compares between. I'm going to add the S because you compare between multiple things, not just one thing, multiple things. You compare between things, yeah? So let's read it again. The supplied bar graph compares between the amounts of time spent on 3 different types of telephone calls in the United Kingdom between 1994 and 2001. I think this one looks perfect. Moving on to the overview. Overall, it can be seen from the chart that throughout the period, whereas the number of minutes spent on local calls of fixed lines was the highest, it remained the lowest for mobile phones. I think it looks perfect. Let's read the first body paragraph. In terms of the fixed lines, call time for national and international calls increased steadily, rising from about 38 billion minutes in 1994 to around 62 billion in 2001. Lovely. The amount of time spent on local calls also this one is like the magic wand. Without it, the sentence doesn't make sense, to be honest. Also, you do it like this, yeah? The amount of time spent on local calls also grew gradually, increasing from a starting figure of approximately 72 billion minutes to a peak of around 90 billion in 1998. This number then, when you say this number, it's a good cohesive device referencing. This number then saw a gradual decrease, reaching around 73 billion minutes in 2001. I think it looks perfect as well. I'm happy with it, to be honest. Let's move and read the second body paragraph. Mobile phones, on the other hand, started the period as the least popular form of communication, with only around 3 billion minutes of calls. Lovely. Having witnessed a slow growth until 1998, mobile calls then decreased considerably in popularity to reach a number of minutes of around 42 billion in 2001. Lovely. I said decreased, but it's increased, obviously. So this is my proofreading. See, I finished very quickly. Now let's move to the last stage, which is obviously a stage that you're not going to do in the exam, but we're doing it here, which is evaluating this report. Why is it getting a good score? Let's see. So what we're going to be doing now is I'm going to give you a quick evaluation. I'm going to show you why this report is getting a high score. Regarding task response. Open up the screenshot that you took at the start of the class, the marking criteria and all the bullet points. Because now I'm going to be explaining based on the marking criteria, the table. Salman, you remember last lecture? The table that has the task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and the grammatical range and accuracy. Now I'm going to be comparing this report to the marking criteria to tell you why it's getting a good score. I'm going to show you why this report is getting a high score. Regarding task response. Number 1, how many words have we written? Have we written more than 150 words? We've written 183, which is perfect. So it's more than 150 and it's less than 200. I don't want you to exceed 200 because you're not going to have time.
Nof is saying we have 223 words. 223 words, including the question. Yeah. Obviously, in the exam, they only count the answer. The answer is 183. The minimum number is 150. What is the sweet spot? Between 170 and 180. This is the sweet spot. Yeah. The number that you should be aiming for. Okay. Do not exceed 200 because you do not really have time.
So, regarding word count, tick. Did we give our opinion? No, because our opinion is useless in this case.
Do not give your opinion in task 1 academic. Why? Because no one cares about your opinion. Isa, why do you talk to me like this? Yeah, because I'm not your boyfriend or girlfriend. I don't care about your opinion. Yeah? Who cares about your opinion? No one in this case. Maybe even in life. But let's just restrict ourselves to the ayats. Yeah? No one cares about your opinion. Isa, what do you mean by my opinion in this case? Your opinion in this case could be like you're getting information from your own knowledge. Yeah? You're mentioning reasons behind the changes in the numbers. Don't do this. You know what I mean? Just describe the numbers. Do not tell me why the number increased or why the number remained the same or why the number increased or decreased. Do not mention. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not forecast. Just write. Why? Because, repeat after me, no one cares about my opinion. Keep it to yourself. I care personally. So you don't hate me. I personally care. You can text me on WhatsApp your opinion. That's okay. But don't write it on the answer sheet. Okay? And when you text me your opinion on WhatsApp, I'm going to leave you on read. I'm not going to respond. Okay? You're going to get the blue ticks. Yeah? Okay. But don't feel bad.
Did we give our opinion? No, because our opinion is useless in this case. Don't give me your opinion. All right? Number 3. Did we make comparisons? Yes, we did.
Now, if you look at the table that you took the screenshot of, what does it say? Answer the question, correct? Correct? What is the question? What is the question? If you look at the question, this is the question. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. This is the question. So if you do not summarize the information using an overview, this means you're not answering the question. So having an overview means that you are answering the question. If you're not selecting and reporting the important numbers or the key features, this means you're not answering the question. That's why you have to include key features or main features or important numbers. If you're not making comparisons by saying this is the maximum, this is the minimum, this increased, this decreased, this means you're not answering the question. Okay? So when I say answer the question, this means everything that's mentioned here, where the cursor is, you have to address. Clear? Clear.
Don't give me your opinion. All right? Number 3. Did we make comparisons? Yes, we did. Where are the comparisons? The first comparison was mentioned in the overview. We made a comparison between the highest and the lowest. We've also made comparisons here in the second body paragraph when we said the least popular form of communication. So this is also another comparison. You don't have to make a lot of comparisons, yeah, but at least 2 or 3, yeah. And the most important one is in the overview.
Let me tell you something. Technically, all the numbers that we mentioned are technically comparisons, yeah? So we have 2 different types of comparisons. When you compare the categories to each other, and when you compare the numbers within the category to previous numbers. 2 different types of comparisons. Categories, we're comparing them to each other, and the numbers within the category to the other numbers. Okay.
Did we present an overview? Yes. Did we include key features? In other words, the most important numbers? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we mentioned 7 numbers. 3 starting numbers, 3 finishing numbers, and 1 maximum number. So 7. Okay? Did we avoid inaccuracy? I think we did. We used around. We used approximately. We used about. We used around. We used around. We used around. Yeah? By the way, it's not a good thing to use them for all the numbers. You use them when the number is not very clear. In this case, the numbers are not very clear. But sometimes, let's say, for example, this column is exactly on this line. Don't use about or around. When the number is clear, don't say around. In this case, none of them was that clear, so that's why we mentioned around and about. So task response, 9 out of 9. Honestly, yeah? It's not because I wrote it, because it is. 9 out of 9.
9 out of 9. Why? We answered the question. We hit the minimum word count. We avoided inaccuracy. We made comparisons. We added an overview. So we're technically answering the question. See? Okay, now let's move to the second marking criterion.
All right, let's move to the second marking criterion, cohesion and coherence. Number 1, did we use paragraphing appropriately? Yes. We used an introduction, an overview, a body paragraph number 1, a body paragraph number 2, and we skipped lines between the body paragraphs. So the paragraphs are clearly separated.
When you go to the IELTS exam and when you're doing the paper-based test, skip a line. Skip a line. Don't worry. They do not charge you money for the lines. Skip a line. Make it very clear that you are writing a new paragraph. To make it very clear that it's a new paragraph. If you're doing the computer delivered test, enter. يسميه? Yeah, enter. Which means enter. Okay?
Number 2, did we present a clear theme within each paragraph? Yes. Here we spoke about fixed lines and we made it very clear by using this introductory phrase. Here we used mobile phones on the other hand. So we made it very clear that we're speaking about mobile phones. So we have a clear theme for each body paragraph. So another tick. Number 3, did we have a clear overall progression? Yes. When you have a clear overall progression, this means when you talk about time, especially when you have a chart with a timeline, you start from the oldest date to the most recent date. And I think we have followed this strategy when we spoke about all the categories, okay? So they don't want you to talk about 2001 first and then you talk about 1994 after. They want you to follow a logical progression, okay? Did we use cohesive devices? I think we did. Let me show you. This one, you can consider it a cohesive device if you want to. And also this one, these introductory phrases. Yeah. Then is a cohesive device, by the way. Because it's, what do you mean by then? This means you're referring back to something that you mentioned earlier, then. So the following step is this. This number, it's referencing, yeah? It's a pronoun, this number. So we're linking this sentence to a previous sentence. When you say also, this is also a cohesive device. Also, what do you mean by also? Well, there's something that was mentioned earlier. That's why I'm saying also. So we're linking these sentences together. On the other hand, what do you mean by on the other hand? Well, we've mentioned something earlier. That's why we're saying on the other hand. I think it's perfect in terms of the cohesive devices. You don't have to overuse them, remember? Yeah? Regarding coherence and cohesion, I think 9.
Let me tell you something. A lot of students, they think cohesion and coherence is using in addition, furthermore, therefore. Yes, that's correct. These are a type of cohesive devices. Yeah? But sometimes when you use them a lot, it makes the sentences disconnected rather than connected. Yeah? First, in addition, furthermore, therefore, as a result. Oh, it sounds very mechanical. Yeah. So anything that links a sentence to a previous sentence is a cohesive device. When you say this number, blah, blah, blah. Also, on the other hand, all of these ones are cohesive devices. Yeah. Anything could be a cohesive device as long as it is linking one sentence to another sentence. Okay? And here I didn't use in addition or furthermore. I didn't use any one of them because I don't have to. These ones are one type of cohesive devices.
All right. Now let's move to the lexical resource. Number one, did we use topic-related vocabulary? Let's have a look. Here we have a graph with a trend, a graph with a timeline. So let's have a look at the topic-related vocabulary. Increased steadily, rising. Grew gradually, increasing. A peak, describing a maximum here. So, gradual decrease. Slow growth. Increased considerably. Yeah? So these are the trend language. Remember when I taught you the trend language? I'm using them from the tables I showed you earlier. And also, regarding calls, we did some paraphrasing. So we avoided repeating certain words. So here we said the amount of time spent. Here we said the number of minutes spent. It means the same thing. Here we said call time. Here we said amount of time again. Here we said mobile calls. Yeah? So we try to avoid repeating the same words again and again and again. And also when we spoke about the increase, we mentioned the word increase, and also we mentioned the word rise, and then we mentioned the word growth. So we try to avoid repeating the same words again and again and again. Okay? So we use topic-related vocabulary. We avoided repeating the same words again and again and again. Did we use uncommon lexical items? Well, not really. Most of them are common, to be honest. Well, not really uncommon, yeah? So it's not the best in this area. Did we use collocations? Well, a bar graph is a good collocation. Call time is a good collocation. You know, when we spoke about the increase and the rate of increase, these combinations of verbs and adverbs, they are also collocations. So when you say grew gradually, this is a collocation. Two words that normally come together. When you say increased steadily, this is a collocation. When you say increased considerably, this is also a collocation. So regarding collocations, we did use good collocations. Okay? Did we make spelling mistakes? We didn't, because we had Microsoft Word. In the exam, you're not going to have Microsoft Word. So be careful, yeah? Regarding word formation, I don't think we made any mistake regarding word formation, yeah? So lexical resource, let's say 8, because we didn't really use a lot of uncommon lexical items. Let's say 8 out of 9, okay? Now let's move to grammatical range and accuracy. Did we use complex structures? First of all, in this paragraph, in the overview, here is our complex structure, the complex sentence, okay? And here, this one is also a complex sentence, by the way. This is also a complex sentence. When you say having witnessed a slow growth, mobile calls then increased. It's like saying after witnessing a slow growth, mobile phone calls then increased. So this is a complex sentence as well.
Complex sentences are the best grammatical structures to use to compare two pieces of information to each other. It's your chance to flex your muscles when it comes to grammar, especially when it comes to the overview, because you have to make a comparison. And what's better than having a complex sentence to make a comparison between two pieces of information? You can use while, whereas, although. These ones, when you use them, you make the sentence complex, which means you're making a comparison, so you're getting a good score on the task achievement, and you're creating a complex structure or a complex sentence, which means you're getting a good score under the grammatical range and accuracy. So you should use a complex sentence at least once in the overview. While the number of female students in this school is high, the number of male students decreased dramatically. See a comparison. Yeah. While Novas attended on time, Salman came late. See, I'm giving two pieces of information using one sentence. How did I combine them? Using while, or whereas, or although. You got it?
Because after, the conjunction after is one of the subordinate conjunctions. Okay, so this is also a complex sentence. Okay, and also we used a lot of parenthetical expressions. We used advanced structures, sort of. Yeah, here, rising from. This is called the participle clause. You remember when we spoke about parenthetical expressions? Yeah, and he increasing from, and he increasing from. Yeah, reaching around. So we used a lot of parenthetical expressions which would give us a good score under grammatical range and structure. Did we make any punctuation mistakes? We didn't make any punctuation mistakes. We used the commas properly. When we used our introductory phrases, we used commas. Yeah? When we introduced something that's not really needed, an extra piece of information, we would add 2 commas because it's a parenthetical expression. So here, throughout the period. So this is a parenthetical expression in this case. And we've added these commas before all of the parenthetical expressions that we used. Okay? So we know what we're talking about. Here, comma, here's another comma.
If you use commas correctly, this is going to show the examiner that you know what you do. Obviously, in other examples, sometimes I use hyphens. Sometimes I use the brackets. Even though I do not really have to use them, but I have to use them if I want to get a high score. I want to show the examiner that I know how to use commas correctly. I know when to add dashes. I know when to add the round brackets. Yeah? Because as I told you, you can write the entire paragraph without a single grammatical mistake and you can get a 5. So you have to flex your muscles by showing the examiner that you know how to use punctuation properly.
Here's another comma. Yeah? And here, when we spoke about this complex sentence, we used this comma as well because we're starting with the dependent clause. So regarding punctuation, it's clear that we know what we're doing. Okay? The last thing, is the majority of our sentences error-free? They are, yeah? So grammar, 9 out of 9. So overall, you do the calculation, 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 8, and then you divide them by 4. I think the score would be 9. Okay, obviously I'm getting a 9 because I have time to think and to fix things. Maybe in the exam, if I went to the exam, let's say I would get an 8. Okay, because I'm not perfect. I don't want you to feel bad about yourself. Yeah, I'm not going to get a 9 in the exam because you might be making mistakes, obviously. You don't have enough time to think. But the more you practice, the higher the score that you're going to get. This evaluation part is very important. If you keep these 4 marking criteria in mind, trust me, you're going to go far in this world. Lovely? Lovely.
Let's clap for the young Arisa. I miss him. Thank you. It took us 3 hours. It should take you 20 minutes in the exam. Yeah. No, but 3 hours because I'm explaining my explanation. Yeah, obviously. The video itself that I have on my website, because this is a lot of students do not know because they attended late. This is part of my course that I teach. I have a lot of similar examples to this. Yeah, the maps, the diagrams, the pie charts, and the tables. So just want to show you how it's done. Yeah. So The entire video is technically around 1 hour. So 1 hour of me writing and explaining. If I'm doing this while I'm explaining, I think you can do it in 20 minutes. Yeah. Hmm. I know it's complicated because, in my personal opinion, writing a report for task one is the most difficult part in the entire exam. In the entire exam, not just in writing. It's more difficult than the essay, obviously more difficult than the letter, more difficult than speaking, more difficult than listening, more difficult than reading. This is the most difficult part in the exam. So that's why it's 14 hours of explanation on our website, the course itself. Only the videos. Obviously, we have to add to them the workshops that we do over there with the students. Listen, because it's the first time you're doing this with me. But let's assume you're one of my students on the website, for example. The first report is going to be very difficult, obviously, because it's the first time. The second one is going to be easier. The third one is going to be easier. The fourth one is going to be even easier because I followed the same strategy. You know what I mean? Like, for example, when I explain rise, grow, and increase. Now I explained it. It's new to you. But when I write another report, I'm going to be using the same thing. So it's not going to be new to you. So the amount of information that you're going to absorb is going to decrease. It's going to witness a dramatic decrease. And then it's going to fall considerably. Yeah. And then it's going to fluctuate. And then it's going to witness a peak. Skyrocket. And then your score is going to plummet. Take a nosedive. No. Okay. It is what it is.